Well, hello again, BookTube, and welcome back to The Sound of May, the last week of The Sound of May, the BookTube event that Steve Donahue and I have hosted. We hope you have had a lot of fun reading some literature involving music, perhaps discovering a new artist that you've never listened to, a new musician, or perhaps you've done the Sound of May book tag. I've been slowly watching through all of everybody's videos the on the Sound of May book tag, and I've really been enjoying learning about everyone's own particular taste in music. That's been really fun to see. I have not been making nearly as many music book videos as much as I wanted to, but I do have a video for you today, and it is about a book that I just finished over the weekend, I think on Friday, and it's a memoir by John Cotter, and it's called Losing Music. This came out in 2023, and John Cotter, he's a writer, was also a teacher. He co-founded several literary journals, and this is his memoir about living with a terrifying disease called Meniere's disease. And Meniere's disease is sort of a combination of fluctuating hearing loss and intense bouts of vertigo. And John Cotter, he developed this disease I think it was in his early 30s when he started to notice that something was wrong. And if you are a big fan of music, and that music is a big part of your life, and you develop this disease, it's 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 torture. I mean, having any disease is not fun, but especially if you are a fan of music or just hearing things, this is a terrible disease. And so, yeah, this book is just about his living with this disease, trying to come to grips with it, and he is, of course, a big fan of music, and all through his life, he constantly would wear headphones listening to music. The music is something that I'm sure, like a lot of us, but for Cotter, he could not go a day without listening to music. But when he developed this condition, it is that completely changed his life, and not for the better. Um, and so, yeah, so right out of the bat, if you read this book, be prepared for how sad it is. I was not prepared for that at all. The first half of this book it's really depressing and sad, but not in a melodramatic way. Um, it Especially when someone develops a disease, they can sort of give themselves over to uh, intense bouts of self pity or sort of anger at the world, and who knows, perhaps they have a little bit of a right to that. But Cotter, he tries really hard not to have that attitude, um, but you can definitely feel that in his writing. So yeah, the first half of this book is about him sort of this, developing Meniere's and uh, coming to grips, living with it, and uh, trying to reorganize his life around living with this disease. And uh, and he provides a lot of information and research about Meniere's disease itself. And what's kind of interesting is that Meniere's is actually sort of an umbrella term for a series of uh, inner ear conditions that physicians really do not know what they are. They don't know. So Meniere's disease is sort of not one disease. It's sort of, like I said, an umbrella term for a bunch of different conditions that yeah, that physicians cannot nail down. And uh, generally, with Meniere's, everyone who develops it has different arrays of symptoms, different severity of symptoms, but generally, like I said, it's a disease of the inner ear, and it causes vertigo, intense bouts of vertigo that can last for 12 hours up to 24 hours at a time, and also fluctuating hearing loss. Cotter talked about how there are days where his hearing could be about 80% of what is usual, and then it can go down to where he's almost completely deaf. And uh, anyone who gets tested and ends up developing Meniere's disease, if you look at their medical charts for their hearing tests, it's all over the place. And yes, so intense vertigo, fluctuating hearing loss, bouts of tinnitus or the ringing in the ears, and also major like roaring in your ears, sort of like a like sound of the ocean just constantly in your ear, and you can't turn that off. And uh, it's really debilitating, and the vertigo bits especially when Cotter talks about having the bouts of vertigo, how it really bad, it can make you throw up, can basically ruin your whole day, ruin your whole weekend, and it's kind of like having, sort of like if you have chronic migraines, where uh, where like you have the attack, and then it takes you a couple days to recover from it, assuming that you don't get another one in that time period. And so Cotter, so Sound of May, he talks a lot about one of the most important things in his life, music, how he's basically slowly losing that. And this came out in 2023, but he was slowly working on this book for about 10 years. And like I said, I think it was early 30s when he started to develop these issues, and it completely changed the way he had to live his life. He had to quit his job. He did a lot of teaching gigs, sort of sprinkled throughout along with his writing, and he had to stop teaching. He had to stop driving. He had to quit his job for the most part, and so yeah, it's just completely ruined his life. And Cotter, he writes in a very, I would say, a sort of an achingly simple prose, if that makes sense. Like the sadness drips through in his prose, but like I said, it's not overly melodramatic or sentimental. And he he writes in what I would call a really just a lonely voice, a lonely voice in the sense that when you're reading that, you feel powerless, like you cannot do anything. There's nothing you can do to control any of the situation, and it's sort of the voice of, I would say, an inner feeling person, where they will not explicitly state their emotions or feelings or whatever, but there's a lot brewing under the surface. At least I sort of got that impression when I read this, and there are times where it just feels like he's slipping further and further away, and there's just nothing that he can do about it. And there is a quote from page 59 of this that I wanted to read, if I can find it. Yeah, so, and this gives you a little bit of the sense of his writing style, and as well as what you would expect to read about if you decide to read this. So he says, "When I could hear well, one of the sounds I most loved was a cat drinking water. The simple need was being satisfied for the cat, and the sound affirming that was satisfying for me. Similarly, there's a sound Elisa, that's his wife, there's a sound Elisa makes when she tastes something especially toothsome, a kind of satisfied smack of her lips. I missed hearing that when my ears went bad, but before it happened, I didn't know it was a sound I'd miss. I didn't know it was a sound I'd miss. Acquire a chronic condition and you'll feel like you're falling, or at least I did. Falling as if from a high cliff, coat whipping over your head. You lose the papers in your pocket. You lose Bach, the wind's too loud, but you don't land. You just keep falling. So there are moments like that scattered all throughout this book, and several moments of just when he describes music and the feeling that music invokes in him. It's very beautiful prose. There's a quote from page 14 where he talks about trying to describe how a certain song feels to him. I think we all get that feeling where there's a song that has an especially strong impact on us, and we try to describe that feeling, and we can't do that. We can't describe that to other people. It's something that is sort of below the surface of language. But he talked about sitting and listening to this song. He said, "Sitting there, listening and longing, my heart fluttered into my throat. Every moment I'd lived with the song compacted and contracted. I felt absorbed and released and excited for hours afterward. In the days that followed, I tried to explain to friends just how emotional it had been, but it's like trying to tell a dream." That sentence of you feel like you're trying to tell a dream to somebody, or in the sense that you're trying to describe a song to them, the way the song makes you feel. So yeah, the first half, it's called Losing Music. The title of this is called Losing Music, basically because he talks a lot about how he's losing his ability to listen to music and losing his ability to hear. And people with Meniere's disease, their hearing slowly gets worse over time, because with Meniere's, they don't know what causes it. They, as in physicians, do not know what causes it. There is really no treatment for it, and there is no cure for it. And some of the treatments that people have success with is like low salt diets, and I think low sugar diets as well. That works for some people, but it doesn't work for others. There's little things like that, and of course physical exercise and things like that. All of these little treatments that help, none of them worked for Cotter at all. So that's another added element of misery on top of this. And so yeah, so the first half of the book is him talking about developing the disease and losing his hearing, losing his ability to live the life that he wants. And the second half talks about really his researching the disease, and also trying to find his empathy again, because there's a period of time where he sort of loses empathy for other people, in the sense that anyone diagnosed with a chronic disease or a terminal disease, they get angry. They're in that sort of bargaining phase where they keep asking, why me? And so the second half of this is him dealing with that as well. And there's an interesting chapter in this where he talks about Jonathan Swift, the writer, the guy who wrote Gulliver's Travels. And Jonathan Swift had this condition too, and he lived in the late 18th century, early 18th century, and if you think that there's no knowledge about it now, they didn't even wash their hands before they operated on people back then, when Jonathan Swift was alive. And so Cotter does a lot of research about Jonathan Swift, and really he sort of becomes Cotter becomes an expert himself on Meniere's disease, and how he is I don't know if you can hear that, but there is somebody screaming outside my window for whatever reason. I live in a college town. Sorry, but where was I? Oh, yes. And so he goes to Cotter goes to all of these, goes to basically every doctor in the country, every ear, nose, and throat, otolaryngologist, neurologist in the country, trying to figure out what is wrong with him. And some of them say Meniere's disease, others say it's, just stress. Try not to be stressed out. Uh, those are particularly frustrating parts of this book. At least frustrating in the sense that he's having to deal with it, and yeah, he even ends up going to the Mayo Clinic, and they don't know what's wrong with him, and so yeah, so that's what the second half. So yeah, the first half of the book is him talking about developing this disease, his life changing because of it, and the second half is more his researching the disease and trying to get his empathy back for the world, and also him taking on some of these teaching jobs where that intentionally help him to put his situation into perspective. Like he takes a teaching job in this, I think it's Fort Lyons in, I want to say, Colorado, and Fort Lyons, I think it was I'm terrible with history. I believe it was a fort in the Civil War, and recently it had recently been turned into a sort of homeless shelter for homeless people who were particularly addicted to drugs. And Cotter, he takes this teaching job, teaching people there, and so he writes a couple chapters about that. That's a really interesting part of this, and he talks about how the situation could always be worse, sort of trying to get his empathy back in that way, whether or not it works. But yeah, so this was really, overall this was really good, and toward the end of the book he even talks about when he's trying to get his empathy back, he talks about contemplating suicide, and those are particularly dark or heavy moments in the book. Like I said, this book is filled with misery, but not in the self-pitying, over-dramatic way, to an extent. Yeah, but this book was really good, and not very long either, like less than 300 pages. And so, yeah, if you need a quick book to read for the last week of this Sound of May event, I highly recommend this. This was great. It was really good. Really sad. Prepare yourself for that. But just great. Yeah, hopefully I'll be putting out a couple more videos, I think, this week for the Sound of May, so that way I don't have just one video discussing a music book. And so, yeah, hopefully you liked this video. To go and find this book and read it. So, yeah, I guess that's it. I will see you next time.